evening. Jamaica on Sunday recorded 154 additional COVID-19 cases with ages ranging from 9 months to 98 years old, increasing the total number of cases to 13,203 with 1,766 being active. Of the new cases, 84 are men, 69 are women, and one other is under investigation. No new fatality was recorded, keeping the tally at 304. However, 2 deaths are under investigation. In the meantime, there were 140 additional recoveries, increasing the tally to 10,973. Some 84 persons are in hospital, with 10 being moderately ill and 8 critically ill. 1 person is in government quarantine, while 28,292 are at home. The government of Jamaica has extended the travel ban on flights coming in from the country from the United Kingdom, the UK, until Sunday, January 31, 2021. Additionally, all non-Jamaicans who have been in the UK within the last 14 days prior to the intended arrival date in Jamaica who may seek to enter the island through another country will not be permitted to enter Jamaica. A statement from Prime Minister Andrew Holness outlined that Jamaicans who have been in the UK within the 14 days prior to the intended arrival date who seek to enter the island through another country will be tested and placed in state quarantine for a minimum of 48 hours until the results are returned. If negative, they will be allowed to be transferred to home quarantine to complete the 14 days mandatory quarantine period. If positive, they will be transferred to isolation at a location that is approved by the Ministry of Health and Wellness. Meanwhile, the Ministry of Health and Wellness says it will continue to work with the various airlines to support the repatriation of UK residents who are on the island and wish to return to the United Kingdom. Cargo flights from the UK will continue to be exempted from the travel ban. In the meantime, Minister of Health and Wellness Dr. Christopher Tufton is reporting that the 20 positive cases from the last flight remain in state isolation and are stable. Reports from the respective health departments are that persons who are quarantined at home remain asymptomatic.
It is to be noted, however, that through the actions of the government following on the recommendations from public health, that we were able to quarantine and test those passengers on the UK flight. I believe that was reported. As a result, the 20 positive cases were isolated in a government-approved facility, and based on home assessment completed, some were allowed to isolate at home. As at today, the report is that they all remain stable and are asymptomatic. Those who returned a negative result were fitted with monitoring armbands and transferred to home quarantine. The reports from the health department have indicated that as of today, they all remain asymptomatic. Barring the development of any symptoms over the next 3 days, those in isolation will be deemed as recovered, and the intention is to release those individuals. The persons in home quarantine will be also released by the parish health authorities.
Dr. Tufton on the weekend pointed out that this new strain of COVID-19 does not cause a more severe illness, as there is no evidence currently to back that claim up. He is monitoring the situation in the UK, including the outcomes of virological investigations, while preparing for an expected surge in local cases of COVID-19.
As it relates to this strain of COVID-19, I want to say to the public that there is no evidence to confirm that the strain causes a more severe illness or affects the efficacy of the current approved vaccine. The key is to follow the advice of the Public Health Authority, and that is worth repeating. We are monitoring what is happening in the UK, in other jurisdictions. The technical team continuously gets updates. They examine the information that comes out of those jurisdictions. They continuously keep in touch with the World Health Organization and PAHO. And as of now, as said earlier, there's no evidence to confirm that this makes you more ill or it affects the initiatives that are now in progress towards having a vaccine.
Meanwhile, Dr. Maurice Guy, Shadow Minister of Health and Wellness, says the opposition is genuinely concerned about the government's handling of the testing and release of information on the new variant strain of the coronavirus, which is spreading globally. He said the sending of the testing samples to the Caribbean Public Health Agency, CARPHA, the release of the data to the government, and the public disclosure of the findings are worrisome because of inconsistencies in statements from the Ministry of Health and Wellness and Dr. Christopher Tufton, the Minister of Health and Wellness. Dr. Guy questioned why the Health Ministry said that it did not expect the information from CARPHA for another 2 weeks, when allegedly, according to Dr. Tufton's statement, it was already available. He also asked what was the rationale in holding back the results from the public in such a time of anxiety and crisis. The opposition spokesman said that with the confirmation of the presence of the variant strain of the virus among the samples tested, the government must move with alacrity to tell the country what the new measures are, if any, that will be instituted to mitigate a possible spread within the Jamaican population. He also said that there is a need for a greater level of contact tracing for those persons who would have encountered someone who tested positive for the variant strain of the virus. 3 of Jamaica's primary healthcare facilities are currently near COVID-19 capacity, with others close to the danger zone, as the country has seen a spike in cases of the pandemic over recent weeks. According to healthcare officials who were speaking at an online COVID-19 press conference on the weekend, the rise in cases is mainly in the western end of the island, and the situation has placed a strain on the health facilities there. Chief Medical Officer, CMO, Dr. Jacqueline Bisesa Mackenzie, said Falmouth, Spanish Town, and Linstead hospitals are all above 85% COVID-19 capacity, which is called the red zone. Falmouth is at 89%, Spanish Town at 88%, and Linstead at 123.
We are over 84% capacity, and this gives us an idea of how our parishes are managing in terms of the cases, the COVID cases, and how the hospitals are able to stand up to the pressure. So this is something that we continue to monitor, and we can see that Falmouth Hospital, Spanish Town Hospital, Linstead Hospital are over 84% capacity, and therefore are in what we call the red zone, and these are hospitals that we watch very carefully. And then we see that the other hospitals are threatening to be there, and we look at KPH, Savlamar Hospital. In terms of isolation capacity, we would see that Noel Holmes Hospital, Falmouth Hospital, again in the western side of the island, they are over their isolation capacity for COVID cases. And in terms of case management, just to give you an overall picture again in terms of where our cases are, just want to show that 47% is where our overall occupancy in terms of our COVID beds, where we have 174 beds being occupied out of a total of 370 beds. The majority of these are in the western region, and you would see that in the western region is where we would see more of our moderately ill, severely ill, and critically ill cases.
According to Dr. Bisesa Mackenzie, the situation in the western end of the island was made worse recently when health authorities had to enforce restrictions on Westmoreland, with the Savannah Lamar Hospital having a high occupancy capacity for both regular COVID-19 cases as well as for isolation.
We are looking a little bit better than we did over the last 2 to 3 weeks in terms of capacity. What we would have seen, we would have pointed out that we continued the restriction in Westmoreland, because not only was the hospital in Westmoreland, Savlamar Hospital, its general capacity was quite high, as well as its isolation capacity, but also the other hospitals within the Western region were also coming under pressure. And so that was one of the reasons that we had given why it was justifiable to continue the restrictions in Westmoreland. So this is something that we continuously monitor so that we can find, as soon as the hospitals enter that red zone, which is above 85% capacity, we can start to look at interventions to try to manage that situation to prevent an overwhelming of the system.
Minister of Health and Wellness Dr. Christopher Tufton said the situation is of concern since the island's health authorities have fought from the beginning of the pandemic in March to keep the public health system at an acceptable level.
The entire process around the public health response to COVID has been to not allow the public health system to become overwhelmed. Right. And we've been working at this has been our core, at the core of everything that we do. And to the extent that we are now seeing signs of that is cause for elaboration and for emphasis on why it is important. I think it's still important to just emphasize that if we get to a stage where the hospital cannot handle symptomatic cases that require hospital treatment, the next best thing is to move around persons by shifting to other hospitals. But assuming challenges there, then we become almost, impotent, if you will, to provide the level of hospital care that will be needed for those persons who are the most severe. And we just cannot allow this to happen. So I say again to the people of Westmoreland and Western Jamaica generally, St. Ann is certainly featuring prominent in the numbers, that we need to appreciate the consequences of the numbers and the impact on the public health system, because everything is geared towards being able to cope.
In related news, the Education Ministry yesterday says 129 schools have been cleared for face-to-face teaching following assessments done by its ministry and the Ministry of Health and Wellness, while appealing to parents to get students off the streets and in classes as schools resumed today. In providing an update to the e-COVID task force and the principals of schools approved for face-to-face teaching, Minister of Education, Youth and Information Favour Williams said all students and teachers are expected to utilize one or all of the Ministry of Education, Youth and Information's approaches to ensure that the education of students continue despite the COVID-19 pandemic.
All students and teachers are expected to utilize one or more of the 4 approaches to ensure that the education of our students continues despite the COVID-19 pandemic. Those approaches, you will recall, are 1, online learning utilizing the Google Suite Learning Management System. Each student with the capability to access the virtual classroom should be utilizing this platform. Number 2, we will continue with our audiovisual approach in which lessons will still be on our TVs, cable networks, and radio. Number 3, we will also have the learning kit approach. All students should already be in possession of their textbooks and worksheets. The ministry will continue to distribute learning kits. Parents, if the learning kits are not getting to your children, please contact your schools. And number 4, this term, following on the pilot, a total of 129 schools have been approved for face-to-face teaching and learning. All schools have made preparations to start. Among the high schools approved to begin face-to-face, 3 are boarding schools. With all these different ways in which our children can receive formal education, no child in Jamaica of school age should be sitting idly around or on the road going to the corner shop or doing housework during school time, which is designated as 9 a.m. to 3 p.m., Monday to Friday, starting January 4, 2021.
The minister pointed out that the focus for this term is the preparation of children for their exit exams, CSEC, City and Guilds, CAPE, NCTVET, and the Primary Exit Profile PEP exams.
Looking forward, despite the pandemic, as an education sector and as a nation, we must now focus on preparing our children for their exit exams. CSEC, City and Guilds, CAPE, NCTVET, and the Primary Exit Profile PEP exams. Grade 6 students at the primary level are scheduled to sit the first of two components of the PEP exam, the ability test, on February 23, 2021. The ministry has strategically scheduled the ability test first, as this test is not based on the children having been taught the body of subjects in the National Standards curriculum. The results of the ability test in February will give us a sense of the potential rather than just the academic performance of our children. It will alert us as to what our children are capable of doing so we can adequately prepare them for the performance task and the curriculum-based tests, which are based on the National Standards curriculum and comes later in May 2021. The focus between now and February 23, 2021 will be on getting our students in a frame of mind to successfully sit the ability test, which comprises 40 multiple-choice questions. In light of the ongoing challenges, we will expand our media campaign to keep everyone abreast of all interventions to ensure student success.
Additionally, Minister Williams explained that a mobile student support initiative will be launched on January 18 of this year to focus on the students who have not been consistently engaged in the last school term.
Students will be provided with fully funded access to Edufocal and one-on-one educational service in preparation for PEP and other external exams. Additionally, a mobile student support initiative will be launched on January 18, 2021, to focus on the students who have not been consistently engaged in the last school term. We will be providing after-school classes to small groups of 5 for 2 hours twice per week using the schools, church halls, community centers, USF community access points, the Jamaica Library Service locations, and other temporary learning spaces. We will launch the Learning Kit Challenger and Learning Kit Motivator for those students who are performing below expectation. We will help our teachers to develop and utilize personalized lessons to support our students.
In other news, the Marine Coast Guard is warning beachgoers at the Helsha Beach in St. Catherine to comply to closure orders in an effort to slow and stop the spread of COVID-19. This comes as the Marine Police and the Jamaica Defense Force JDF had to order persons to evacuate the Helsha Beach on the weekend. Acting Operations Officer of the Marine Police Division, Inspector Darren White, explained that a number of persons were seen at the beach.
As it relates to the lockdown of the Lime and Maiden Keys, we would have put measures in place since yesterday evening, 6 o'clock, to mitigate any person, boaters or patron who breach the lockdown on the Keys. Up to this time, we would have 100% compliance on the Maiden and Lime Keys. However, at the Helsha and Wave Beaches, there were some challenges for the police throughout the day, as patrons were seen scammering from the water upon the approach of the police, who was later joined by the JDF Coast Guard. In the afternoon, there was an increase in patrons who ran from the police towards the beach, and you could have seen overwhelming numbers within the bars, the restaurants, and shops. Persons were flouting the pandemic, the COVID pandemic, as it relates to not wearing their masks, not maintaining social distance. Going forward, we'll try to put in place strategies along in combination with the St. Catherine South Police to try to mitigate those occurrences. Persons were warned from early in the morning and throughout the day that the beach is closed and they are to maintain social distance. They are not to be on the beach, in fact, and they continue to float. In fact, we went close to them and they even tried to tout at the police of not maintaining the protocols.
The search to locate the bodies of two teenage girls who got swept away in a section of the Black River in St. Elizabeth on Saturday ended yesterday when the bodies of both girls were recovered hours apart by divers. The teenagers have been identified as 13-year-old Gabriella Madden and 15-year-old Felicia Litchmore, both of Cooker District, St. Elizabeth. Reports by the Shiloh police are that shortly after 4 p.m. on Saturday, the girls and other persons were at the river when they accidentally fell in the water and got swept away. A search to locate their bodies ended yesterday afternoon when they were both fished from the river by local divers and members of the Coast Guard. The drowning of the teenage girls comes on the heels of another similar incident where a 16-year-old boy reportedly drowned in a swimming pool at a guest house at Hatfield District in the neighboring parish of Manchester on Christmas Eve. He was at the resort with his mother, who was staying there while vacationing on the island. The St. Elizabeth police recorded the first suspected murder in the parish since the start of the year on Sunday morning, after the body of a woman was found at her home by residents. The deceased has been identified as Dorsey Huggins of Accompong Town, St. Elizabeth. Huggins' death is believed to have stemmed from a domestic dispute. Reports are that the body was found at her home in the Maroon Town community by residents there and the police were summoned. The body was said to have been found with what appeared to be wounds inflicted with a sharp object. 2 men are now dead and 2 others injured after gunmen carried out an armed attack on a group of persons at the Dam Road community in St. James yesterday afternoon. The 2 deceased have been identified as 24-year-old Kenroy Sinclair, who is said to be the son of a popular female police officer, and a 44-year-old Dean Reed, both of Dam Road in St. James. Reports by the Spring Mount Police are that shortly after 1:30 p.m., all 4 persons were standing at a shop along the roadway in Dam Road when armed men traveling on board a motor vehicle drove to the community and opened fire, hitting all 4 victims. The gunmen made their escape in the waiting motor car while the police were summoned, and upon arrival, all 4 victims were rushed to the Cornwall Regional Hospital, where the 2 men were pronounced dead and the other 2 persons treated and admitted in serious condition. Investigations are ongoing into the findings of charred remains believed to be that of a human, which were found in a house on Oakland Road, Kingston 11 on Saturday. Reports from the Hunts Bay Police are that at about 3:40 a.m., residents heard explosions, after which they saw smoke coming from a house dwelling and summoned them. Upon their arrival, checks were made and the charred remains of an unidentified male was found inside the house. The Halfway Tree Fire Department was alerted to conduct cooling down operations. Our team spoke with Acting Assistant Superintendent at the York Fire Station, Tina Lynch, who explained that they responded with 2 units to extinguish the blaze.
At approximately 4:02 a.m. this morning, we received a call of dwelling house on fire, 49 Oakland Drive. We respond with 2 units, one from the Alpha 3 and one from York Fire Station respectively. On arrival at given location, the building was totally engulfed. We get in operation with 2 medium jets. During cooling down operation, we found an identified male which has perished in the fire. Loss is estimated at $5 million. However, 6 adults and 4 children are left homeless as a result of this fire.
One man explained that he heard the sound of gunfire and explosion before persons convened on the scene.
Yeah, from about after 3, hear the shot them. Bow, 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 bow. So me come out from my veranda now and I look out. Then me hear a big explosion that the place jerk like a bomb drop. And me see the ball of fire go up in the air and thing. And I don't know if the man them come out and run go down, but when them go down here, next set of shot down Spanish Town Road there, so. And by the time we run go around and hear people are ball out and thing, one youth dead in the house around there. Like him get the shoot up and then them burn down the place.
The scene was processed and the remains removed to the morgue pending post-mortem. Investigations continue. The Jamaica Public Service Company is reporting that it has closed its Westmoreland office in Savannah Lamar following a firebombing incident at the facility on the weekend. Reports are that shortly after 1 a.m. on Saturday, unidentified persons threw a cocktail bomb onto the premises, which immediately caught fire. The Westmoreland Fire Department was alerted and the firefighters responded and carried out cooling down operations. JPS says the office, which is located along Great George's Street, suffered damage to both the internal and external sections of the premises, and that it will take the necessary steps to ensure the safety and security of employees and its property, even as it continues to provide services to valid customers. And finally, in the news, in an effort to assist the homeless population, the Kingston and St. Andrew Municipal Corporation, in partnership with the Ministry of Local Government and Community Development, coordinated efforts from volunteers across the parishes to treat homeless persons on New Year's Day. Mayor of Kingston, Councillor Delroy Williams, says he is pleased with the growth and efforts of the volunteer groups to assist the homeless.
Approximately 2 years ago, the municipality had raised some concern about persons going on their own, and with good intentions, but going on their own to feed members of the homeless population. We did raise some concerns because you would be aware that there are concerns in terms of the health issues that some of the members of the homeless population would have, and those health issues come with certain types of meals and how they are fed and what they are fed. And so we had some concerns with public health issues. So we had raised the concern and had asked that all persons who are desirous of taking on this venture at different times throughout the year, that it would be best that if they would coordinate that through the Poor Relief Department. And what we are saying now is that we are pleased. We are pleased because we see many more persons and many of the organizations that do this. We realize that they have been cooperating and coordinating their efforts through the Poor Relief Department.
Mayor Williams further pointed out that in the interest of the homeless population, it is best to have coordinated efforts like these.
We encourage all to do so, and it's far better and in the interest of the members of the homeless population that they do so, because the Poor Relief Department has far greater information in terms of health issues and in terms of food safety. And so we want to commend all the organizations and individuals who have been doing this and who have been taking the time out to provide for members of the homeless population throughout the year, but also in addition to that, having coordinated these efforts through the Poor Relief Department. So we want to thank them for doing so and ask God's blessings on them that they will be able to continue to do so.
One volunteer, Keithia Hufat, in speaking with our news team, explained the joy in being able to share hope to these members of our society and in turn the joy they have in receiving the help.
It is very nice to give back to Jamaica, and initially because in high school you have to do community service, so that was a thought as well to come, but it is very nice. Now in the COVID time, community service is not really needed right at the moment, but it is nice to come now and to just give back. It really touches their heart that they can come and, to get something from all of this, and even from those songs and the prayers that we give them. It really warms their hearts. Even in your community, that you can go and give back to them and just be grateful.
And those are the stories making news. I am Tamar Mikhail. We will now take a break and then join Christopher Scott with sports.